Thank you to our Season 2 That Greenwich Life presenting sponsor, RMA of New York. RMA of New York is a full-service fertility center that offers fertility testing, IVF, egg freezing, male reproductive medicine, and LGBTQ family building. And with 14 clinics across Manhattan, Brooklyn, Westchester, and Long Island, they make expert care accessible. RMA of New York is changing lives and helping so many of us write our next chapter. Visit rmany.com for more info. If you have a child who doesn't always fit neatly into the boxes we expect, or if you've felt that way yourself at any point, I think this episode will really speak to you. Almost every single one of us listening today has lived through a moment that changed everything. A moment you never saw coming. A moment that split your life into before and after. You didn't wake up that morning expecting it. You didn't know the phone call was coming, or that the appointment you walked into so casually would be the one that rewrote the future you thought you would have. And whether that moment happened recently or years ago, it stays with you, reshapes the way you move through the world, and reshapes your entire identity. If you've been listening to this show for a while, then you already know what I'm about to say. But if you're brand new to That Greenwich Life, welcome. And I want you to know this too. I've had that life-splitting moment. For me, it happened in 2019 when I was pregnant with my second son. One routine 20-week anatomy scan changed everything, and we'll talk more about that today. We'll also discuss what happens after the moment your life changes, when your days look nothing like the ones you once pictured, when you're trying to put one foot in front of the other while also grieving the version of life you thought you were walking toward. Whether you're navigating a new normal with your child, your spouse, a parent, or even yourself, it all feels terribly lonely. But, and hear me out on this, what if that moment is actually the biggest gift you could ever receive? And in that pain lies an opportunity for gratitude and transformation. You may not see it right now, but sometimes the hardest seasons uncover strengths you didn't even know you had. And the moments that break you open also reveal gifts you never expected. My guest today understands that better than anyone. Through her own personal story she is about to share with us about her daughter that I know so many of you will relate to, she has created something called the Gifted Life, a movement redefining what it truly means to be gifted and how we can better celebrate anything and everyone outside the so-called norms. If you are in a season of life right now where you are carrying more than most people will ever understand, this conversation is for you. It's going to help you feel lighter, more hopeful, and more empowered by whatever challenge you're up against. Hard seasons touch all of us eventually. It's part of being human, and it's part of why we are so much more connected than we think. So let's get into it. Hi, I'm Dorothy, a reformed celebrity gossip girl. For more than a decade, I was a red carpet reporter and tabloid magazine editor in New York City, appearing on all your favorite TV shows, spilling the secrets of the stars. But now, I'm a mom of two living that Greenwich life in the suburb of Greenwich, Connecticut. And these days, I'm using my storytelling power for a purpose far greater than gossip. My own journey through infertility, IVF, and late-stage pregnancy loss taught me this. Everyone's carrying something hard, no matter where you live or how polished your life seems. That Greenwich Life isn't about status or perfection. It's about honesty, healing, and the messy, beautiful middle ground between who we are and who we're becoming. It's about the resilience it takes to rebuild when things fall apart, and the experiences we all share that remind us we're never truly alone. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad we're in this together. If you're a regular listener of this show, then you know my road to having my daughter was long, painful, and traumatic. I've shared parts of that journey with all of you because it's so important to have the right support during one of the hardest times in your life. That's what makes this season's presenting sponsor, RMA of New York, so special. They're not just fertility doctors, nurses, and embryologists. They're a full team, walking beside you every step of the way. RMA of New York is a full-service fertility center that offers fertility testing, IVF, egg freezing, male reproductive medicine, and LGBTQ family building services. And with 14 clinics across Manhattan, Brooklyn, Westchester, and Long Island, expert care is always within reach. I also have to shout out Dr. Lucky Seacon, board-certified reproductive endocrinologist infertility specialist and author of the upcoming book, The Lucky Egg, which is all about understanding your fertility with warmth and humor. RMA of New York is changing lives and helping so many of us write our next chapter. Visit rmany.com for more info. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of That Greenwich Life, Season 2, presented by RMA of New York. I am your host, Dorothy Cascerceri Simone, and we have been these last couple weeks talking about some of the harder things going on. We just got done with the holiday season. I'm sure you're all absolutely exhausted from the gift wrapping and the parties and the hosting and all of the things, making it super magical for the kids. But also something else that comes up a lot during the holidays, and that is grief. Grief and the holidays maybe not being exactly how we want it to be because there's something that we're all struggling with. We talked 2 episodes ago, episode 6 with Bianca Jade, about family estrangement, which is something that definitely hits home around the holidays more so than ever, but it's something that many of you are going through and continue to deal with. And it's something that many of you asked for me to talk more about. So then last week, I brought in the fabulous Eve Kerwin to talk even more about family estrangement and how it doesn't necessarily start with an argument over something trivial, that it actually starts generations before us with cycles of generational trauma, patterns of trauma, and toxic family systems that generation after generation just perpetuate that cycle and those learned behaviors that are so ingrained in us. And we unpacked so much of that, and you all felt so helped by that episode and so inspired by that episode. And so this week, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the harder things in life that we're all dealing with. Not because this is a place that you come to have Debbie Downer as your host and you are out on your walk with your dog or your baby, or you're driving the kids to swim practice and you're in your car holding back tears because of everything that we're talking about. But this is the real stuff. This is the meat of our lives. This is not just all the parties and the beautiful shoes and bags and the gorgeous exotic vacations. You guys know that Greenwich Life is about so much more than that. It's about the unpolished and the messy. And today, I really do know that this episode is going to speak to so many of you, mostly because I've already encountered so many different people who were talking about this exact topic. And then I said, you're never going to believe this, but I actually have this guest coming up and I have this topic in the lineup. So just last week, before I introduce my guest, I just want to tell this quick story because, I prep in advance for these episodes. They're not scripted, but I still have work to be done to prep and to come on here and talk like somewhat of a coherent individual, even though my brain is usually completely fried. I can't even speak, completely fried from a million things I'm running from and to, and with all the kids and the house and the work and all the things. But just last week, I was having coffee with a friend at one of my favorite places, the Granola Bar in Greenwich, and she was talking about her son and his ADHD and how difficult, it was in the beginning because so many of his teachers and educators and people who were around him were trying to get him to fit into this particular mold and this particular box that he wasn't going to fit into. And so much of her struggle, she was saying she felt so lonely because she couldn't get people to understand that he was special in his own way and that he needed something different and that he needed ways that he could really show his special gifts to the world and share them with the world. And that was not going to happen with them trying to stuff him into a particular mold that all the other kids were sitting in. And how it really was this kind of lack of community during this time. And now, she has things sorted a little bit better, but she went through something similar with her other 2 kids with their ADHD diagnoses. And then she ended up finding out, kind of through her own advocacy work with her kids, you know what? I think I have been living with ADHD for probably all of my life. And this is why I listen to the same song 100 times on repeat, because it brings me comfort. And of course, I had to ask what that song was. I'm trying to think what she said it was, but I don't want to reveal like her identity. But you know, it really like kind of stopped me in my tracks, because she is a huge fan of the show and a huge supporter of the show and a listener of the show. And I said to her, you're never going to believe this, but I have this episode coming up that's going to speak exactly to what we are saying right now in this coffee shop. So I'm going to introduce my guest, because she's sitting here in my studio so super patiently. She is somebody who you all know. If you follow me on Instagram at Dorothy on TV, you definitely know her, because she's one of my absolute best friends. She has chosen family for me. We've known each other since our sons were born in New York City. We travel with our sons, who are basically like cousins/brothers. But more importantly than all of that, like great, you know, personal connection that I have, more importantly, she is such an inspirational person in all of her work. And you heard her in season 1 of That Greenwich Life. It was episode, let me think, I think it might have been like episode 7. You know, I always say like my episodes are like my kids. If you had 44 kids, you would never be able to keep all of their names straight. But anyway, if you go back to like the earlier episodes, she came on and talked about her brand and her business, which it was Clear Space for Joy. And now she, through her own personal growth and personal hard work and healing about her own story, which was not part of Clear Space for Joy, and now she is bringing into the fold and telling it here for the very first time, she has now expanded her brand to something even more impactful that still incorporates all of the amazing work that she's been doing with Joy and clearing space for it. But now she has, she's launching something brand new, an extension of what she's already been doing that really is going to heal and help so many people. She is the creator of The Gifted Life, which I love the name of it, a movement redefining what it means to be gifted. Through her experience as a mother of 2 children living vastly different yet equally profound expressions of giftedness, and through her own rare genetic disease diagnosis, which she is going to talk about today, Julie reframes her resilience, joy, and acceptance as lived practices, not ideals. She's a coach, speaker, advocate, and mentor who helps people discover the unexpected gifts inside their own lives. I kind of gave it away a little bit, but her name is Julie Vincent, and I would like you all to welcome her to the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here again.
I'm so happy to have you here. We have been talking so much about this kind of thing that's been going on in the background. Mm-hmm. Personally, it's been going on in the foreground, but professionally, it's been in the background. And, you know, I've noticed even for my own work in episode 6, I talked a lot more in depth about my own struggles with family estrangement and, you know, revealed a lot more than in the past I had been comfortable with revealing. And I think in this authenticity that we bring to the table, I think that, you know, it's a way to really help others identify with things that they're struggling with. So I know the story. I've known the story since your daughter was born. I have looked up to you and looked to you for absolute inspiration in how you've handled the last, how many years has it been? 8 years. But now today, the mic is yours.
Thank you. I am so grateful for the opportunity to not only share this story today, but especially on your podcast, because you have been the person in my life that has been there through every bit of it and always held me through the trauma and held space for it. And I can't explain how much that means.
I love you.
Love you too. So let's get started.
Yeah.
My daughter, we had a normal pregnancy with my daughter, and I had a normal vaginal birth. But when she was born, she aspired meconium, which is her first poop. And so after about 30 seconds on my chest, they whisked her away to the NICU unexpectedly. And, you know, that's trauma in and of itself, right?
Yes.
Is seeing your baby hooked up to tubes, getting detoxed and all of that. It was really scary, and there was so much anxiety and fear involved in that. But after she started healing about 24, maybe 36 hours afterwards, during that time in the NICU, the doctors would have expected her to sort of have a different look and experience neurologically. And they didn't. And so they pulled us down to have a chat. And all I remember is hearing words like floppy baby and genetic disorders, all the potential for so many different types of things. And they really had no idea what it was. So all of a sudden, we were in the world of MRIs of her brain and spine and genetic tests and seeing specialists.
And you're in the hospital recovering from just giving birth.
Yeah.
And this is not at all when you were on the way to the hospital.
Nope.
In labor. This is not at all how you thought things were going to go.
Zero.
Right. Right.
And luckily, all those tests came back clear. And after 10 days, we were able to leave the NICU. But that didn't mean we had any answers. Mm-hmm. We had zero. We had a bunch of instructions, a bunch of directions, a bunch of suggestions of people to see. But we really were left with no answers and just this giant unknown. And we left to go have my daughter meet my son for the first time with that feeling. And then for the next 2 years, which was COVID, by the way,
yeah.
We
Fun
lived
times for all.
Yeah, we lived in a state of therapy, unknown, quiet trauma, so many doctor's appointments, suggestions for what it might be. And truly, I don't know that we were ready to really know what it was.
Did you, during this time, just, fill the listeners in, if you feel comfortable, explaining kind of like, what were you observing yourself? Like, what were you mentioned floppy baby.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It's basically low tone in her body. So
low muscle tone.
Low muscle tone. So there was lack of like a lot of movement. We had trouble feeding her. I was breastfeeding, and then we had to add some formula to that and stay up all night kind of getting her to actually eat because it was really tough. There was just this sort of lack of almost energy, if you will. And it just felt like something wasn't quite right.
Yeah.
And then over time, there was, lack of milestones and delay in all of that. And, for example, my son ran at 9 months old and my daughter walked at 20 months old.
Yeah.
And she crawled on her first birthday. So, these are the things that I think we are raised to believe that like these milestones are so significant and to be so joyous about them. But when they don't happen, like what happens, when we were just living with that time after time after time. And trying to not compare too, right?
Of course.
Our child and also other children. It was a really lonely time. I can say that there were very few people who understood, and it wasn't for lack of care or trying. There are plenty of people who did care and gave us love and tried, but there's just something that you can't match. Right? You can't explain what this is. There was no words because I didn't even know, And so it was really hard to communicate about it. And I think it was just also people were afraid to talk about it because they didn't want to hurt my feelings or make assumptions or any of that. So it was this, quiet trauma that was happening for a long time.
And also living in somewhat of a riddle where you knew something wasn't right and the day-to-day was clear in the day-to-day, but you couldn't get to the bottom of it.
Right.
And all of the appointments, that's exhausting for anyone, especially when it's your newborn, like your 1-year-old. I mean, anybody with any kind of a medical condition, I think about my own fertility journey and how you're at the doctor so much and you're seeing so many specialists and you're navigating healthcare. And then it's also COVID at the time, which is a whole other obstacle that you're up against. And that in and of itself is so exhausting. Exhausting and traumatic. And you lose so much hope in the medical system. And you also, I think, lose a little bit of trust in yourself because you're like, why can't I get answers? Why can't I get the help that I need? And I know the one thing about you then and still now is that you are the most amazing advocate. Like you moved heaven and earth through all of this time to do everything for her and give her the absolute best life and best outcome possible. So it was not for lack of trying that you didn't have any answers at that time.
Yeah.
You know what the most important part of this show is? You. Yes, you. The person listening while you're dropping the kids at soccer, folding laundry, or walking your dog. You make this show what it is, and it's your support, your time, and your energy that brings it to life every week. So can I ask a quick favor? It'll take just 20 seconds, I promise. Head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit that follow button so you don't miss new episodes, and leave a quick rating or review. Another great way to spread the love, pop the link to the show or your favorite episode into a group chat so more friends can check it out. These small gestures make a huge difference, and most of all, they help the message reach someone who needs it the most. As always, be sure to follow me on Instagram at DorothyOnTV and check out DorothyOnTV.com for the latest updates and to shop our brand new merch. And now back to the convo.
Although I will admit that I don't think that we were ready to run the test that eventually led to learning what it was. I think that I felt like there was comfort in the unknown because I was so afraid of the known.
Yes.
And I was so traumatized at the time that it was really hard for me to see clearly that, finding out was actually a good thing.
But that's what trauma does. Right? Trauma, it makes you afraid. It makes you afraid and it almost makes you avoid. Yeah. And some people even can experience being in denial about something that they know to be true.
Right.
So it's a real double-edged sword going through something like this because you want to advocate and you want to get the best doctors involved, but then you also kind of suspect that it's not great news and you don't really want to know what it is.
Exactly.
It's a very tough position to be in.
Right. So shortly after her birthday,
this is her second birthday.
At 2 years old.
Right.
We ended up seeing a different geneticist at Yale who said something that completely changed my life. She said, "Julie, I know you feel like there's more comfort in the unknown, but I've worked with thousands of people, and I can promise you that there is so much more power in the known for both you and for her."
I love that. How true.
So true. And it was just exactly the words I needed to hear at the right time. And on the way home from that appointment, my husband and I decided to run a whole exome genetic test, which, by the way, if you don't know what that means, is you learn everything about every gene in your body, including yours, because you're the parents, right? So we would learn, maybe what she has, but also, does she have the gene for breast cancer? Does she have the gene for Alzheimer's? All these other things, right? And for me, I was thinking, I don't want to know any of that. I want to live in the present, right? But what she had said to me was, it's just better to find out what it is because there's so much more power in that. And right now you're living in this world of insane amounts of possibilities of what it could be. And there's so much more fear and anxiety in that. And I think she was 100% on.
That's great advice. And it's great advice for anyone going through anything. I mean, I'm thinking of a person that I know, who's like on the edge of a divorce and, knew that there was an affair going on and didn't want to know. And then eventually there is power in that. There's power in knowing the facts and knowing what the true score is. You just can't avoid forever, right?
Exactly. So we ran the test and expected that it would take several months to get the results back. That's a pretty in-depth test. But instead, a couple weeks later, we got a call from her. And she said, I need you to come to Yale tomorrow and bring your daughter. And my heart sank. And I think I had the worst night's sleep of my life and the worst car ride there. And we arrived the next morning. And she sat us down and said, I actually had a hunch that it was something else. And so instead, I ran a specific genetic test. And it came back that your daughter has congenital myotonic dystrophy, a type of muscular dystrophy. And in that moment, I squeezed her so tight. And I could just see these like dreams of her life shattering in my mind. Because she's listing, as a doctor does, out all of the possibilities of what this means. And, a lot of them were really scary. Myotonic dystrophy affects your muscles, your lungs, your brain, your heart. And what I've since learned is it can affect those things. It doesn't mean that it does, right?
But you didn't know that at the time.
But I didn't know that at the time.
Right. Because at the time, there is just complete groundlessness.
Right.
Like everything that you knew just was pulled out from under you.
Right. Yeah. And then she said, and one of you has it too. It's hereditary. And in that moment, I knew it was me.
How did you know that?
I just had an intuition. And I felt it deep inside, and I gave my blood that day. And then a week later, she called to confirm that indeed I was diagnosed with myotonic dystrophy.
Now, did it give you any kind of hope? Well, probably in that exact moment, it's so devastating and it's so scary, but did it give you any hope to know that you are healthy and that you live like a pretty normal life? Did you think like, oh, this is a possibility that this is how it could work out for her?
No, I wish that it did. The way it works is actually the genes expand from generation to generation. So I have a certain amount of repeats of the gene, which is called classic in a mild case. And so for me, onsets are adult and potentially could include things like myotonia, muscular weakness, cataracts in my eyes, something maybe with my heart. So obviously I'm on the road of, watching those things now. But for her, when it's congenital, it's much more severe. And so learning all about the differences in that, it just felt like, how unfair. Like I wish that we could switch.
Of course.
As
parents, I feel like that's always how it is, right? If our kid is sick, we want to be the ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously what followed all of that was an immense amount of fear, anxiety, grief.
I remember.
But also love, gratitude, joy. And I think that day when we found out, I made a choice. I made a choice because we always have one, right? We always have a choice to think one way or the other. I made a choice to let go of focusing on the fear and the catastrophe of the situation and all the potential things that could happen, and instead to live with presence and to clear space for the joy and really be there for her and enjoy our life as much as humanly possible. I also made a choice to care for my body and care for her body in a way that could potentially affect the outcome.
You made that choice. And I know that there are a lot of people who know that they have that choice, but in the moment, they're so torn up with grief and all the trauma of it. How did you just decide, no, this is the way that it's going to be?
It's a great question. I think one that I'm still really thinking about as I heal. I just felt like there's no way we can predict the future. Not even geneticists and doctors can predict what will happen to us.
That's right.
And if that's true, and we all know that that is, no one can actually do that, right? Then why would I give into the worst case scenario?
Right.
Right? I have to be the one that's strong. I have to be the one that believes in miracles, which, by the way, have happened.
Yes.
So, and I'm getting chills, full body chills right now, because the more you can believe in something like that and trust that things will happen the way they're supposed to, you know, the more power you have in your life. And I didn't want to be powerless, and I didn't want her to be either.
And you were not giving energy to the possibility, or even maybe the probability that this situation could be worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. You weren't giving that energy to it. You chose to believe that, you know, it was something that you could navigate. And I mean, that was 6 years ago when you had that appointment. And I mean, I know, but bring us up to speed with, you know, where Harlow is now.
She is in second grade, in a normal classroom. Her favorite thing to do is ride horses. Mm-hmm. She loves to dance and sing. She's hysterical and swim. She's got a great sense of humor. She's an amazing sister, friend, and daughter. And she's got a lot of special gifts. We do still go to annual appointments, a clinic for my muscular dystrophy, myotonic dystrophy specifically, every year. And she gets all the things checked, which is, I've shared a little bit about on my social media. I am Julie Vincent. It's a difficult day, no matter what. Even after so much healing, it's always a difficult day because you never know what they're going to say or what the test results will say.
Right.
But I always go in there now with such a different, almost, you know, more regulated nervous system, with the belief that I know the facts, that she's doing well, that there's no problem with X, Y, and Z as of now, right? And instead of expecting to hear something bad, going in knowing and wanting to share all of the amazing updates. So right now she's thriving.
So between age 2 and age 8 now, it wasn't always that way. You had to go through a lot of things and struggle with a lot of things that brought you and her to this moment, right? Mm-hmm. Talk about some of the challenges.
I would say one of the biggest challenges was socially. So, you know, being that so many people didn't know what was happening, because truthfully, what am I going to do? Walk in the room, hey, everybody, look, my daughter has muscular dystrophy. I mean, it's not something that like I had a lot of words for, and it's so complicated, and I didn't really know how to approach friends, or even, you know, especially people that I didn't know quite well. All my best friends knew, obviously. Mm-hmm. So
could people tell?
I think some people can tell, and some people can't. It depends on the situation. But
just explain for the listeners, like, how do you think people can tell?
Well, especially when she was younger, it was like, developmental milestones were delayed, right? So there was that. Speech delay. She has some low facial tone. So sometimes, as far as like when she was a lot younger, like being able to really smile hard, it looked a little different. I think people could probably tell because she was oftentimes on my lap or clinging to me and didn't feel super comfortable, communicating with people, whether that was due to, speech issues or just feeling like maybe she was different than other people and couldn't quite keep up with what they were playing with, especially if they were running around.
That's a hard thing. That's a hard thing to deal with. And I know that a lot of people listening have a similar journey in that fact. When you see that your child might just be, a little bit different than the rest of the kids, and you're struggling with something like that. I mean, this is really the whole reason that you are expanding your offering and you're expanding into the gifted life.
Exactly.
Because there's so many people that need this kind of support when they're going through something like this.
Absolutely. I think I've seen so many people. I can see it. I'm the one in the room now sort of quietly watching and noticing these things happening. And now that it's, not necessarily me, I can still see it happening with other families and children. I certainly coach people who have children or even themselves who are going through adversity or challenges, quiet traumas. And I think over the years, hearing all of those stories has really given me this, like, especially accompanied with my own personal experience, like, has given me this perspective on differences and, dealing with adversity. And one day recently, on one of my reflective walks that I do by the beach, I think it was actually after my kids' fall conferences, I was thinking about that and everything that was said those days and thought to myself, God, what if there was, I got this almost like download. What if there was a world where differences weren't looked at like something that was bad, and instead they were celebrated just as much as the successes of a traditionally gifted child performance and all of that? What if instead we could, create an environment where there is conversations about children and adults, for that matter, where they're invited to feel like they're included and celebrate their special gifts that might not look like the traditional sense of the word, but instead come from adversity and meaning.
You've heard me talk about Room for Paws Pet Resort before and how much our golden doodle bleaker loves staying there when we're traveling. But did you know they also offer daycare, training, puppy preschool, and a professional grooming spa specializing in Doodle's grooming services? Visit roomforpawspetresort.com and mention That Greenwich Life for 20% off your next full-service groom. Looking for a place where your kids can move, grow, and build confidence? At Jackrabbits Gymnastics and Soccer Club right here in Greenwich, Coach Nikolai and Coach Daniela create a fun, supportive environment for all age groups. My daughter Gemma loves her classes there so much, we even asked them to host her second birthday last year. To find out more, visit jackrabbitsgym.com. You're flipping the script on the word gifted, because when you say gifted, people think it means the highest of the highest level students who are acing all of the math tests, reading, writing, the absolute smartest people in the room. And it can mean that, but it can also mean this idea that, we all have these gifts that have come out of struggle, and our lives maybe not shaping up to be normal. And I use that in air quotes because I cannot stand the word normal, because there's no such thing.
Right.
Show me one normal person.
Right.
One. I'm not normal. I mean, if you guys at home know that. You've been listening to this podcast for a long time. But like, there's not one single person who's normal or whose life is normal.
In my experience in the school system, I've realized, at first I sort of thought like, oh, I'm the only one, talking about IEPs and all these things. But so many people's children are in these programs and on nonlinear paths. And there's so much beauty in that. And I don't think it's talked about enough. And I still think there's this like old school definition of, it's like special needs or highly gifted.
Right.
And there's just these so much
or then the normal students in the middle.
Right.
Normal.
Or the normal. And there's just so much in between. And can't every single one of the people on that spectrum feel like there's something to celebrate about themselves and that they have special gifts, especially the ones, that have been born from adversity.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's you've gone on a different path than you thought. You said something earlier in the conversation when you were at the hospital that you just saw like all of her dreams shatter. Mm-hmm. That was a really powerful statement. And the thing about being a mom or a parent is that in a way your dreams also shatter. Mm-hmm. Now looking back, 8 years ago at that moment, have all of her dreams shattered? Have some shattered? Have none?
I don't think any have shattered. I think it's all unwritten, but the path that she's on, albeit nonlinear, is incredible and has been miraculous. Mm-hmm. And I truthfully feel now that she is going to change the world. And that's probably even better than the dream I had for her initially.
What kind of advice would you give people who are listening who maybe they've had their own positives and their own wins in a hard situation, but maybe they're not quite where you are? Maybe, maybe they're child or their spouse or even themselves, is not as well adjusted. Maybe there hasn't been as much of a miracle. Maybe they're still kind of dealing with one of the worst case scenarios. What's your advice to those people?
I would say find someone to talk to about it, number one. Getting into therapy for me was completely life-changing. Mm-hmm. Someone listening that wasn't a friend, someone that could completely understand what I was saying and hold space for that was so incredibly important. Finding a therapist is a huge piece of, I think, getting on the path to feeling like acceptance. And so that's the second thing I would say is like, look for the truth, right? The fear is false evidence appearing real. Where can you find truth in it? Mm-hmm. Because that leads to acceptance and healing eventually.
That's really good advice for the second line of defense in this kind of a really tough life situation, because denial it backfires. Denial is, I think, someone's worst enemy in a situation of a challenging situation. So acceptance, I think, is excellent advice. Acceptance, because people have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
I know, I don't pretend to know what I would ever do or what kind of a parent I would ever do. You can't say, but I do know several examples of parents who their kids have particular challenges and gifts, and they are not willing to label it or to speak openly with others about it. And that's okay, because everyone has to do what's comfortable for them. But I can't help but think, even though that's so hard, it could be so beneficial for both the child and the parent.
That's right. And I just think back to what that doctor said to me, right? It's like sort of the same idea. Whereas if you're not talking about it, then you're in this period of unknown and not getting the support you need. So could you step into the authentic truth and realize that indeed that's the path to finding the way to feel better, to find the joy, to find the presence, to find the peace, to find more love. It's the denial, it's the not dealing with it that is really the biggest challenge.
Oh, everything's fine.
And I
Everything's
promise
fine.
you that there is meaning in it. And that's why I'm creating this mission of the Gifted Life, is to help people feel heard, tell their stories, to find the support that they need, to feel heard, and then to be able to get on the process of letting it change your life, and then being able to find the meaning in it.
And also, it's important to note that you don't have to accept it, and you don't have to really confront it and be honest about it at the very beginning.
Absolutely.
It took you, Julie, all of this time to be open about your story and about your daughter's story. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That is okay, because there was a lot of trauma and there was a lot of healing that needed to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, even I just, like I said, I just talked about my family estrangement for the first time more in depth, because sometimes we need time
That's
to
right.
process things ourselves. You can't really help others if you're processing from a place of anger and resentment and victim mentality and all these different things.
Yeah. And shame.
And shame. Yes, correct.
That
Shame is
was
a big part
probably
of it.
the last piece of the pie that I had to let go of.
What is the shame piece of it?
It's hard to explain. I would say, there's a piece that it's genetic, which
So it's your fault.
Quote,
Quote unquote.
I never really felt that way, but I think that is something people have thought and talked to me about. So there's that one piece, right? And then there's just the shame that things didn't go to plan, on a particular timeline, that it was different. There's shame involved with that. There's shame with getting all of the help at the school. There's shame with therapy. All of it has shame. And it's just a different path that feels like there's so much emotion tied to it. And sometimes it's like the shame stops you from talking about it.
Right.
You don't want to put this heaviness on someone else.
Right.
It's not a typical coffee shop conversation. It's not hey, how are you? Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. No, how many times have we said I'm fine? But really what we mean is I have no words for what I'm trying to explain I'm going through right now.
Yes. I definitely can chime in on this and say I felt so much shame when I was going through all of the losses that I went through. When we had my 20-week anatomy scan with our son Dean and found out that he had a congenital heart defect along with a very serious syndrome caused by the syndrome. It was why can't I just have a baby that's healthy and have a baby at all? And then everybody around me sneezes and gets pregnant.
Right.
And pops out these perfect babies. And, and we had to have a TFMR. We didn't have a choice. And there was shame for years going and doing another round of IVF that didn't work. And then getting pregnant through IVF and then having a miscarriage when, a good friend is over here, packed up all of her kids' stuff, gave it all, donated it all, done, and then had a surprise fourth baby. And the shame was really deep. What's wrong with me? Why am I so broken? And why am I so unlucky? And all of these things.
Yeah.
And throughout my journey, I realized that I had spent a lifetime talking to myself like that. I'd spent a lifetime with shame Like, why was I the only kid in third grade whose parents weren't living in the same house? Like, why was I the only kid, in second grade that had to miss a day of school to go testify in court in my parents' custody battle?
Isn't it crazy how you connect the dots like that, looking backwards?
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. And I realized that, a lot of things that were easy for me, like, growing up and making friends and having friends and being like a leader and, going to all the like I never had any kind of those typical child/adolescent, I was never bullied. Like I never bullied anybody. I just never had any of that. It was all delivered to me. All of the hardship was delivered to me in the form of family.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's crazy because instead of talking about like how lesser than I felt, nobody would have ever thought when they knew me that I ever felt less than others. Because I don't even think that I really knew that I felt that way until I went through all of the years of trauma around trying to have another baby.
Right.
And then realized like, wait a second, I have a lot of deep, deep stuff to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that your journey has been similar. And you have to look like much further back in the timeline to realize this thing that's happening right now, this like hardship, this terrible nightmare that I'm in, and I'm using like air quotes, right? This thing is literally here and it's not happening to me, it's happening for me.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know it at the time.
No.
At the time, it's only happening to you. You are only a victim of God, the universe, circumstance, somebody else, something that somebody else did to you. But then you realize, wait a second, no, I'm actually not a victim.
But not everybody realizes that. And I think
Correct.
That's why I'm starting this mission. Because, I think you could think of this as just like a reframe of giftedness, but it's not that. It's so much more than that. I think reframing giftedness is almost like toxic positivity, where we're sort of jumping to, oh, let's look on the bright side of things, right? And we're completely skipping through the truth of the reality of the situation, the naming of it, the feelings surrounding it, and the trauma involved. I think that space needs to be held for that and the story of it. But then there's so many ways that you can get support to feel like you can find the meaning in whatever's happening. And that's the world that I believe I want to live in. And so I'm starting that now.
I mean, I think acceptance and tolerance and togetherness and community is, I think, something that everybody is craving more of these days, especially with the state of the world and our country. The divisiveness is more rampant, I think, than we've ever experienced it, at least in our lifetime. So I think what you're creating is incredible. Now, I'm going to ask you a hard question, and I've been asked this question too. So I'm curious to hear what your answer is. Now that, it still is a struggle, and it still is something that you live with, managing your daughter and her condition and her differences. But, she is doing so great and so wonderful. Does that make it easy for you to be in this position that you can talk about this now openly, or that you can create something to help others? The fact that, it didn't go to worst case scenario. So people ask me that sometimes, like, well, you got your baby, you have your baby now. Because my daughter Gemma, if you're just tuning in, this is your first episode listening to, my daughter Gemma is 2.5 years old. And after 5 rounds of IVF that didn't work and multiple miscarriages, and of course the devastating loss of our son Dean, I got pregnant, on my own, and she was born. And, like some people look at it as like, well, voila. Well, she's just fine now because she got what she wanted in the end. And that's always a hard kind of thing. It's not hard, but it's just kind of like, I get it. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I want to know for you, if you think, that's what helps you now to talk about it, if that's part of your healing or,
Well, I think the truth of it is that I still have no idea what's going to happen. And my story and her story is not over, right? I was also diagnosed. And her and I both go to annual appointments and don't know what we're going to hear. And the shoe can drop tomorrow. Do I look at life that way? No. But I think that what the part of the gift is this gift of presence, right? And being able to know that today is the day, right? I'm going to do what I want to do today because I don't know what's going to happen. And so if I can lead a movement with that mindset and have all the different experiences that I've had from, raising a traditionally gifted child through one that is differently gifted, and also feeling like I have differences that I need to work on and consider, like that gives me an insane perspective to be the founder and leader of this and to coach, mentor, and speak about it.
I love that answer because it's the truth. The biggest thing that you can take away from these long journeys of difficulty and challenge is the fact that there's so much power in letting go of control and realizing that you're just not in charge. And I say the same. Yes, my daughter was born, and every single day I look at this chick, even when she's screaming in my face, and I think to myself, I cannot believe that you are here. I am the happiest person in the world that I know you and that you are mine. But I also know that we never know tomorrow, or forget about tomorrow. That morning when I woke up to go to my anatomy scan and I put Daniel Tiger on my husband's iPhone for my son so that he could be there for the ultrasound. When I hit play on that phone, like I didn't think the next 10 minutes would reveal like the most gut-wrenching, life-altering moment of our entire lives. So I think it's in that letting go. And to your point, what you said before, acceptance, that like we're all going to suffer. We all have, and some of us currently are, and we all are going to. That is one thing that we all have in common. And you can't get out of that.
Only fact of life.
Yes, exactly. So, okay, before we wrap up, the gifted life, you're going to be basically creating a community of people, right? Where they can have great resources and you can coach them, and tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So I'm creating a new body of work where I will be coaching, mentoring, speaking, writing about all of this. It will be launched in the coming months, but working already with some people on it and doing some events and speaking engagements in this month and the next, talking about this and really starting to build a community around the mission and the idea. So if you want to be a part of it, certainly follow me on Instagram at I am Julie Vincent, and also go to my new website, thegiftedlife.co, and put in your email, and you will be on the list to be included on all of the news, writing, etc., and be the first to help this program develop.
I love all of it. It truly is the person who has walked through the fire and done the work that becomes the light for others. Mm-hmm. It's not just the bad stuff. It's not just the adversity that then transforms people like you into who you are today. It's the work that you have put in and that you continue to put in. It's the retreats. It's the reading the books, the journaling, the meditating, the talking to others, the creative outlets. Like I think to myself, a lot of my Instagram, a lot of that is me doing a lot of my own work, and just kind of showing it to others. But that's where the true healing really happens, when you are committed day in and day out.
Yeah, it's the rituals.
To being better, and to not letting these kinds of things break you or define you.
Yep.
And Lord knows I got lots more work to do, but you all probably do too. And that's okay. We're just going to keep doing it all together.
Yep.
That's what we love about That Greenwich Life, you know? Thank you so much for coming on today. Like you said, you guys can follow Julie on Instagram at I am Julie Vincent, and check out her new website, thegiftedlife.co. And you all, can follow me on Instagram at Dorothy on TV. You can also check out my website, dorothyOnTV.com, and you can shop That Greenwich Life merch on the website and just kind of follow along with all the different things I have going on. I'm so grateful that you're all here today. I cannot believe that this season is nearing the end. We only have 2 more episodes after today's episode, which is so crazy. But it's just all more the reason to do another huge party, That Greenwich Life Live, which Julie came to and supported me through the entire time. And we'll be doing it again for season 3, and we'll be doing it for another incredible charity, a great philanthropic partner. If you're just tuning in, we had That Greenwich Life Live at the beginning of this season, and we raised over $15,000 for an amazing cause called Pencils of Promise. They build schools in Ghana and Guatemala and Laos, and it's just the generosity of this community that made that happen. So it was a lot of fun. It was super glamorous, but it was also very serious. And we are going to do another one for season 3. So there is much more to look forward to. If you guys like what you hear today, if you enjoyed it, if it spoke to you, please do me a huge favor and get it out there to more people. You can do this by going on to Apple Podcasts, scroll down to where the reviews are, leave some stars, a review. It only takes 20 seconds. If you loved the episode, pop it into a group chat, text it to a friend who you were thinking about during this episode. Sharing is caring, and I am so grateful for every single one of you, because I really do think that we're doing such great work and we're doing it all together. So thank you all so much. I hope you have an amazing next week, and I'll see you all next Monday. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you to our Season 2 That Greenwich Life presenting sponsor, RMA of New York. RMA of New York is a full-service fertility center that offers fertility testing, IVF, egg freezing, male reproductive medicine, and LGBTQ family building. And with 14 clinics across Manhattan, Brooklyn, Westchester, and Long Island, they make expert care accessible. RMA of New York is changing lives and helping so many of us write our next chapter. Visit rmany.com for more info.